Hello, CG community, and welcome back to another episode of Overcoming Graduation with Brian Drury, coming to you live from Sao Paulo, Brazil. Is it live? Not really, but it's recorded, and saying coming to you live sounds fun. So today's episode is a fantastic episode with a new friend of mine, Steve Sconzert. Steve has an absolutely incredible story of perseverance, of overcoming impossible and immensely challenging odds, and also a story about being a survivor and why being a survivor has been one of the most important driving forces in his life, and how you can use the survivor mentality to overcome things you never thought you could overcome in the past. Steve will discuss and this is a direct quote from him, why mindset is always stronger than circumstance. And he's going to teach you how to shape your reality, one specific technique on how to identify what it is that you want to do with your life and how to find the things that really, as he says, light your fire and drive your passion and fuel you to go forward. So Steve's story is one that starts with what many would call a tragedy and what many would use as an excuse and as a crutch for the rest of their lives. What Steve did is he took this challenge and this immense obstacle that was thrown his way in his life. He didn't let it slow him down. He didn't let anything stop him. He used it as just another factor in his life. What ends up happening to him, he talks about how it does not define him in any way, but it is just a reality that he has been given. So you can either choose to let that reality define you, or you can choose to define your reality. So thank you guys for listening in today. This is going to be a fantastic episode. Steve has all kinds of nuggets of wisdom and knowledge to share with you. So thank you all for listening. Thank you all for checking in. And now let me introduce you to Steve Sconzert. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Overcoming Graduation with Brian Drury. Today my guest is a man who I met at the Sean Stevenson 10K speaking event, and he actually was a member of the closer group who worked independently with Sean Stevenson for 6 months to find out or to improve their speaking abilities and really grow into absolutely transformational speakers. The man I'm talking with today was the one who actually won the contest out of all those people who participated in that program, and he has an absolutely phenomenal story to share and some amazing insights and messages for all of you. And it's not just those kids coming out for graduation, it is everyone listening. So buckle up, because this is going to be a fantastic show. So today my guest is Steve Sconzert, and Steve, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Brian. It's definitely an honor to be here, and if I may turn the tables on just a little bit, I looked over what you're doing, and I think it's pretty incredible. I'm impressed by it, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Well, thank you so much, dude. I really appreciate that. And for me, one of the most fun things is getting to meet people like you. I mean, this show really gives me a reason to reach out and connect more and learn more about people's stories. And then after hearing your story, I already loved you the first time I met you, dude, but then when I heard more about your story, I was like, wow, this guy has such an impactful message to share. And also seeing how you've developed as a speaker, you're world class, and I don't think it's going to be long before you're out there talking to audiences of tens of thousands of people. So I figured I'd get you first before all the fame got to your head and you forgot about me. So
yeah, right. Okay.
So
I'll take it.
So Steve's story starts a little bit earlier than like anyone who would be coming out of the college graduation, and I'm going to ask Steve to start at that point for us, where his story began. So Steve, if you would be willing to share that beginning part of your story.
Sure, absolutely. Well, when I was 18, I had just finished high school, and in fact, my high school years were not exactly productive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was pretty smart, so I could get by and get good grades, and so I kind of flew under the radar. I was smart in one way, in that I didn't cut classes in school. I didn't get in trouble in school at all, but mm-hmm. After school and on weekends, man, I like to party. I enjoyed all those things, and really school was just something I had to do and I put up with.
Right.
And so I had an opportunity my senior year. I had enough credits to graduate early or to finish early, just go for for half the year. And so I did that. And 2 months after I finished school, I was in my car. I just bought a 69 Camaro that I was really proud of and really enjoyed. Mm-hmm. And I was at a party and left that party about 3 a.m. and decided it would be a great idea to go ahead and race somebody. And that didn't turn out very well.
Right.
There was a wreck, and my car ended up going through someone's living room, and I ended up with a permanent spinal cord injury. Mm-hmm. So I broke my neck, and so I've got permanent paralysis affecting in some degree or another all of my limbs. Mm-hmm. So I went, I dealt with the accident and all the trauma that went around that, and the months of rehab and learning how to do everything that I had to just to survive, just to live.
Right.
And while I was going through that, and I lived I was born and raised in Wisconsin.
Oh, really? What part?
Green Bay, actually.
Okay, because I after college I lived in Appleton, Wisconsin for a little over 2 years.
Yeah, not far at all. In fact, taken many a drunken road trip to Appleton. It's something I'm not proud of. I probably shouldn't say that. It weren't all that way, but yeah. Anyway, when I was going through my rehab and doing all that up there and getting to know people who were in my situation or similar situations, I learned what difficulty it was to try to live independently in that kind of a climate in the winter.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, wow! I hadn't even. I mean, that's part of the reason I had to leave Wisconsin was those winters, man. They're brutal. So, yes. And I hadn't even considered that portion of it, that living either like with a wheelchair or trying to live independently would be dramatically affected by the ice and the snow and the cold. So, yeah, wow.
Yeah, it was not something I relished. Plus, I was 18, and I still remember my mindset of that at that time. I have to tell you, I was blessed with a wonderful family. My parents were fantastic, and they were there for me and were willing to do whatever it took to take care of my needs and, mm-hmm. Take care of me. But my attitude at that time was like, I don't want that. I don't right. want to be stuck at home. Mm-hmm. And who knows how long I would be stuck there if I started that.
Right. Yeah.
So what I did, I had my sister already lived in Texas, mm-hmm. and her and her husband and family were there, and I got a hold of her while I was going through my rehab, and I said, hey, can you see about finding a place for me to live down there, and I'd like to move down there. So she got me in touch with the vocational rehab counselor and some other folks that helped me find an accessible apartment and some other things that helped me get going and get me moved down there. And so I went right out of rehab and I moved to Texas.
Okay. And Steve, just out of curiosity, how long was that initial round of rehab after the accident?
Well, I spent 2 months in an acute care hospital, most of that in traction.
Mm-hmm. And what does intraction mean?
Yeah, there was in traction. I was in a specialized bed, mm-hmm. and at that time, now the technology has changed considerably since then. But at that time, I was in a bed that looked like a big hamster wheel. Like it was called a circle bed, and I laid across the middle of this bed, and it was designed in a way where they would put like this, be laying flat on my back, and then they would put a stretcher over the front of me, and kind of lock it in place, and then turn the bed so I would go from my back to my stomach. And the reason for doing that was so that it would relieve the pressure from my back and keep me from getting pressure sores.
Okay.
So what they did, and then they would have me on my stomach for an hour and on my back for 3 hours.
Wow.
And that was a constant thing that was changed, rotated for 24 hours a day for 2 months.
Oh my God. Wow.
And during that time, for most of it, now during that time, I had surgery to stabilize my neck. They did a bone fuse. They took a piece of bone from my hip and they fused it into my neck to add strength and stability. And then while that was happening, part of the traction process, they put these metal tongs into your skull.
Oh my God.
And they attach weight to it and brace it so that way it stabilized my neck and kept my vertebrae that were already damaged and sharp from doing further damage to my spinal cord.
Wow. I mean, that's incredible, man. And what year was this that you were in this particular, in the wheel bed or the circle bed?
That was in 1981.
1981, okay. Yeah.
So there was 2 months of that, and then after that there was 4.5 months in a rehabilitation hospital.
Okay.
And that was where I learned first just to sit up in a wheelchair. And it's funny, I think back on those days and it's like, man, I really did come a long way, because I remember the first time getting up in the chair, I lasted about 20 minutes.
Wow.
And I said, I got to get out of this chair, put me back in bed.
Wow.
It just, it just slowly progressed from there to, learn how to brush your teeth and, eat, and everything was adapted in some way.
Wow. So it was about 6.5 months of therapy, and then was it after that, rehabilitation, and after that 6.5 months, was that when you said, okay, I'm ready to kind of strike out on my own and go down to Texas?
Yes, yes. In fact, while I was going through the rehabilitation was when I made the decision to move.
Okay.
So that way it was seamless. Sort of seamless, because the home that my parents lived in was a split level home, and so that did not bode well for a wheelchair at all.
Right.
So they were going to sell our house and get like a ranch style home or a single level home, and rather than put them through that and then tell them I'm leaving anyway, I said, look, let's just don't worry, don't do that. I'm going to look for a place in Texas, and they were very supportive. Again, I'm very blessed that I have such a fantastic family, both my parents and my siblings and all the friends that I had at the time. They were just, I can't say enough about how supportive they were.
That's fantastic, man. And I mean, I understand the feeling, because you're hitting this point where you're the feeling of wanting to move out and be independent. That's the feeling I'm referring to specifically, because you're at that point where you're 18, you've just graduated high school, and you're ready to step out into the next phase of your life and move on. And so can you tell us, what was the original plan for graduation prior to the accident? Were you planning to go to college or maybe go to start working? What was the original idea?
My plan, and that's a fantastic question, because my plan was no plan.
Okay.
And I've got to tell you, I was a bit aimless. And again, fortunately, I had a great family, and I was somewhat intelligent, but yet I did not like school. I didn't want to go to school, and my focus was on my car and all the fun things that you do when you're 18 years old. And and so I didn't want to think about going to school. I had a full-time job working as a night manager in a supermarket. And I was willing just to ride that for a while and enjoy life and just see where that went. And again, that wasn't not very focused at all.
But at the same time, I mean, I think it's very rare for anyone at that age or even after college graduation to have a really clear picture of what they want to do. So it makes perfect sense. It's like, well, if I'm not sure exactly where I want to go in the world, why not just have as much fun as I can right now? Which I think is part of that is a beautiful way to live life. But as you and I have learned through working with people like Sean Stevenson and immersing ourselves in that type of material, there's times where that self-indulgence can get old after a while, or just like going out drinking, partying. And I think everyone kind of has this deeper desire to do something more, to connect with people or to impact people. So but it's just interesting because what you had said was there wasn't really any plan, but still that is a form of a plan. And for all the listeners, I think it's a really important point, because if you listen to how Steve describes his story, at no point was there any, well, I couldn't do it, or I wouldn't, or, well, now I had this accident and everything was over. What Steve said was, the situation changed and he adapted to the new circumstances and then found a way. So, Steve, I think that's fantastic, and I'd love to continue in that story. So, you eventually moved down to Texas?
Yes, I did. I moved October of '81. I moved right down to Texas, and I didn't even want to give one winter up there a chance.
Yeah.
It's like, get out of here. So I moved down there, and I have to admit it was exciting, but it was scary as well. I was fortunate. I was able to move into an apartment complex where there were already a number of disabled people that, and it was funded in part by the Texas Rehabilitation Commission, where they had some attendant care help at this complex.
Great.
So
okay.
For needs that I was not able to handle on my own, there was somebody there to help, and that was a great way to transition from the nurturing biosphere of a rehab setting, which by the way was very nurturing, and I made some great friends and great, when you're in a rehab hospital for 4.5 months, you get to know people, and you become friends with them, and
Absolutely.
You really, you develop relationships, and it was very, it was like living in a bubble almost. So that transition of being able to go into a place where there were people that could help when I needed it was huge.
And so, Steve, in that first year on your own, because you've just come off rehab, and at this point, did you have an electric wheelchair?
No, at that time I was in a manual chair.
Manual chair, okay.
In fact, I stayed in that manual chair just up until a couple of years ago.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, so I was going to ask, what were some of the biggest challenges that you found in that first year, coming from being in the, like you said, the biosphere, that kind of safe, completely comforting, supportive environment where people were ready to help at any time, down to you're pretty much living on your own with help when you need it? What was kind of some of the biggest challenges that you faced?
Well, I would say first was although the people that I met were very friendly, it was still such a new place, and I felt alone in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
There was, when I remember when I moved down, it was with my mom, and my aunt helped me. They both flew down with me. My dad wasn't able to come because he was a school teacher, and so he had to stay up in Wisconsin. But So when they left, it was like, okay, well, here I am. And at that time, I still didn't know how to drive.
Okay.
I had no car. I had no transportation. My sister and her family, they lived on the other side of town. And Dallas is a pretty big city. It's not just,
Appleton, Wisconsin.
it's not 10 minutes. It's not 10 minutes from where I live to where she lives. So, I only saw her, once a week or so.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't drive. I didn't really have any friends, and so I was a bit isolated. I wasn't, there was nothing set up for me to be able to get in school right away or start doing something.
Right.
So that loneliness and boredom was something I had to deal with and overcome, and that went away after a while. After a while, I got to know people and became and made friends, but that was still kind of a difficult transition.
Yeah, I think that's one of the toughest transitions for anybody moving to a new place. But like you said, there were additional challenges because you didn't have the car, you didn't have the ability to just kind of cruise out somewhere and go meet people. But what I found, even like with myself, when I moved to new places, I had the car, I had the ability to go out, but many times I found myself just sitting on the couch complaining about not having friends when I'm not going out and doing anything about it. So, more recently is when I've started to jump into things and actually start booking classes for like salsa or trying to learn something new and meet people that shared my interests. So I think it's a very universal kind of feeling when you're in a new place. It's very easy to feel isolated until you kind of put yourself out there and get to know the people around you and get to know the people who share similar interests and are like share what it is like that's at your core. So I think that's it's an amazingly universal thing how people feel in new places at times. So all right, after that time, what was the next step? Was there school, work? Like, how did the next transition happen in your life?
Well, I had some surgery on my right hand to increase the functionality in it, so I wasn't able to get in school right away the following semester. So I had a little additional section of time there where I wasn't in school, but I had this surgery to increase my function, and I went, and that's when I also learned how to drive. Mm-hmm. And I got a car, and I had it equipped with hand controls. So
awesome.
Finally, I was able to gain another level of independence, which was just enormous. Especially for a guy that's 18 years old or 19 at that time, it's like
right.
Getting a car and being able to get on the road again. That was enormous. Mm-hmm. And then after that is, then I was able to get enrolled in school, and I started pursuing a degree in data processing. Mm-hmm. And I went through it. See, that would have been from 82 through 84. Mm-hmm. And I got an associate's degree in data processing, and out of that, and when I completed those studies, I got hooked up with with the company actually that I'm with now, mm-hmm. Doing customer support.
Okay, great.
So I just sort of started out there as working phones and doing customer support, and I've worked my way into doing technical support from there. Mm-hmm. And it's been quite a journey.
Yeah, I mean that's amazing. And now that we're in 2015, it's been quite a while with that company. So obviously you've developed a lot and grown in it. What I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about, Steve, is like you said, getting that ability to drive back was just so massive for the feelings of freedom that you had in your life, or your ability to just get out and do things. And so often when you hear people giving motivational speeches or trying to encourage somebody to appreciate their gifts and the things they have in life, they'll say things like, well, imagine you couldn't just go out and drive, what would you do? So for you, when that actually did happen, when there was a time where you couldn't drive and getting that back, can you dig a little deeper into what the emotions were like and what it felt like that really opened up for you?
Well, again, it was more of that sense of independence, and you know, there was part of there was something that drove me at that time, and you know, it's like I know that my dad let me get a car, or he let me buy a car before I was out of high school, and he didn't let anybody else in my family do that. And that was the car I had my wreck in.
Yep.
And so it was important for me at that time to, you know, be the best I could, in part because I wanted to show my parents that, hey, you know what, this isn't the end. You know, this
Right.
is I'm still going to have a great life, and it was I guess I kind of felt guilty for them, and I was trying to do whatever I could to try to alleviate some of that. I don't know if that's coming across right, or if I'm really explaining that in a way that makes sense, but it was just that was one of the things that drove me at that time.
No, that absolutely makes sense, in that you were trying to not only show them that, you know, yes, I can drive, I can handle this. This is something that is mine, but even more importantly, you were wanting to show them that, hey, you know, it's not like I'm just going to sit at home. I can have my independence and I can manage these things myself. And that was something that you wanted since you were 18, probably since you were younger than that, to be able to be on your own and live your own life. And so I think that was, like you said, it was a way for you to show your parents, like, don't worry, guys, I got it. You don't have to worry about me. So obviously is a huge point, and it makes a lot of sense. So now, so once you had gotten into this job and career, I know also that you have a family now, correct?
Yes.
So-
Yes. What I after I started working for this company, actually the person who I married was a therapist that I had known previous.
Oh, really? Okay.
When I was going through my the rehab that I went through down here in Texas.
Okay.
And so we were friends for a long time. Then we got together and we married, and we have two absolutely wonderful daughters. Megan, who's 23, and my second daughter Mallory is 20. And like Megan just graduated from college last year. Mallory's a sophomore this year.
And I mean, that's awesome that you were able to take something where a lot of people could look at as, I'm going through therapy, I don't want to deal with this, and then that ended up turning into a relationship and a marriage, and that later brought two amazing young girls into the world as well. So that's beautiful. And what's your wife's name, by the way?
Actually, her name is Jane, and we're not married anymore.
Okay.
That didn't end up working out. We still have a good relationship. We get along well, and we still, you know, have a good relationship and do things with our kids together and with their family. But we're no longer married at this time.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, man. But I'm glad that you still have that good friendship to be able to share and grow with the girls together. So, and it sounds like there's just the way that I hear you say your daughter's names, that there's so much love and pride in what they're doing. So congratulations there, because that's really amazing for you too. That
thank
you have these.
Real proud.
I was going to say that you have these wonderful daughters that are doing these amazing things. And so I was curious, just as you were telling me about your daughters, what were some of the messages that you shared with them that when it came to drinking, partying, and those things, based off the experiences that you had had?
Well, you know, that's really interesting, because they saw firsthand what the effect of that was,
right,
you know, in me. So it was almost like there didn't have to be a lot of verbal messages there. What happens when you drink and drive? What happens when you know, have that kind of a lifestyle and decide to get out on the road? Oh, Dad, This is what can happen. And so I'm fortunate and blessed that they know better, and they saw that lesson right off the bat.
And out of curiosity, I feel like every parent has, one or two, or maybe just a couple of key things that they really want to express and share with their children, or hope that their children really kind of embrace as they grow. Are there any particular key things that you've shared with your daughters that it's really your genuine hope for them that they embrace this idea or concept as they grow?
Well, the main thing that I always want to impart and I do this more by example, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back or anything by saying this, but it's, your mindset is always stronger than circumstance. There's examples of that in the world that we've seen, people who are, people in history who have overcome horrific things. And it's all because their mindset is stronger than whatever circumstance that they're in.
Absolutely.
And if that's the one thing, because things are going to get thrown at you. Things you aren't going to expect are going to get thrown at you, and you've got to find a way. It's all in your own mind and in your own heart how you deal with it.
That's beautiful, man. And it's so true, because it's an unfortunate reality that everyone will face at least one large challenge, but usually many large challenges in their life. And exactly like you said, that mindset is always stronger than circumstance. It's if we can frame it in the right way, if we can use it as fuel to create some good, to do good in the world, that we can use that as something that doesn't hold us back. It's not a limiting story or an excuse. We use it as something to fuel us and grow into a greater person to share with the world. So that's a wonderful message, man. So now, for everyone listening, as you can tell, in that moment right there, Steve has some amazing messages to share with the world. So Steve, can you share with the listeners a little bit about what some of your next plans are, and what are the things you're hoping to do in the future?
Well, right now I am going through some life coach training, and I'm going to hopefully pursue some things in that area. I'd like to, in a way that I'd like to work with people and help them get through difficult times in their life in ways similar to maybe that I have,
Right.
And I would like to be able to do that in a way that that inspires them and helps them to grow. Looking at, I know my story and I can relate what I do, but I'm not really trained in, relating that to someone else on a one-to-one basis. So that's something that I'm wanting to learn to do, and hopefully I can take that and help others with that. And then also I'm looking to possibly move into some of these messages in a public speaking format, where I can, relay my story and maybe my own insights and help inspire others in that way. And
I can tell you, for all the listeners who weren't there when we saw Steve give his winning speech, the guy has an absolute gift. I mean, the speech that he gave was emotionally, he connected emotionally. He brought us really on a journey, and at the end of it, you were left with an extremely powerful message, which was all about being a survivor. And just like he said before, its mindset is always stronger than circumstance, and you can survive anything when you have the right mindset. So, Steve, I know as soon as you start diving into that career, that people are just going to be, the phone's going to be ringing off the hook for you for more and more speaking engagements. So I'm really excited to start seeing those videos popping up and you on TED Talks and all of that.
Well, thank you. I hope that would be a tremendous thing to be able to take it that far.
So if anybody who works for TED is listening to this, you can contact me or Steve. We'll give out the contact information at the end of the show, so you can get in touch with him and get him to give a great speech. So, Steve, now in terms of speaking and the lessons you're trying to share, that you're moving and you want to move into this coaching role and really kind of be a mentor for people, beyond the message of mindset is always stronger than circumstance, when you're wanting to do these speaking engagements or these coaching roles, what type of message is it that you would really want to focus on for the people that you're hoping to help?
Well, I think what you need to speak to things that you want to hear yourself, things that you want to learn yourself. Mm-hmm. That I talked in that speech about the mindset of a survivor, and that was something that even though that I've sort of lived that message myself, it's something that I still need to hear from time to time. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I think that's important is because when you speak to what you really want to hear yourself, then you become emotionally connected to your message. Mm-hmm. When you're emotionally connected to your message, then you emotionally connect to the people you're speaking to, and that's when it gets magical. That's because you can't fake that. Right. When you're, I think we've all listened to speakers, or we've all heard speakers that can get up there and relay information, mm-hmm. and it's like, well, I could go to Google and get that.
Right.
I could get that anywhere, but they didn't. You couldn't wait for it to be over.
Right.
There are other speakers where they talk and you're engaged and you're with them and you're riding that emotional roller coaster with them, and when you're done, you're wanting more. Mm-hmm. And so again, that's that emotional connection, and that's when the person speaks to things that they want to hear themselves, then that's where that happens, and that's what I want to do. That's what I want to bring a message, for instance, of being a survivor and being relentlessly persistent. Mm-hmm. Those are two things that I feel that I embody. That they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
I talk about the mindset of a survivor, or I'm a survivor. Well, why am I a survivor? Well, that's because I'm relentlessly persistent. Mm-hmm. Am I relentlessly persistent? It's because I have a mindset of a survivor. Mm-hmm. They both go hand in hand. So those are the kind of messages that they mean something to me. I'm emotionally attached to those. So I know that if I can, speak to those in a way that's effective, that will have an impact on others.
Mm-hmm. And I can tell you already, dude, you had an impact on me and everyone in that room when you spoke at Sean's event. So you already have that ability, and the fact that you're continuing to hone it and improve, it's amazing. I can't wait to see the things that come next, because that story and that message, not only is it powerful, but it's important, because as we've been talking about, everyone is going to face some massive challenge in their life that is going to test them to the point where they're not even sure if they can handle it. For me, many of my listeners have heard me talk about losing my mom to pancreatic cancer. For you, it was this accident and this serious spinal injury. And it's a situation where I really want the listeners to pick up on one very key thing, is that as you listen to Steve tell his story, at no point has he ever tried to be a victim or tried to have you pity him or tried to say that, well, this is why I couldn't do X. He has always found a way and worked and changed the angle and modified things to make anything possible in his life. So that idea and that mentality of being a survivor also has a big component of not pitying yourself and not looking for others to pity you. Sean Stevenson says that pity is one of the worst drugs in human society because it has no positive benefit. And actually, on that note, Steve, something that Sean talks a lot about is the way that people interact with individuals with some form of a disability. And I think some people, I remember when I ran with my team Triumph out in Wisconsin, which, are you familiar with them? Because there's a chapter in Green Bay as well.
I have not heard of them, no.
Okay, well, they're a group that helps individuals with disabilities participate in endurance events. So 5Ks, 10Ks, marathons, half marathons, triathlons, the whole shebang. So pushing people in specialty running strollers or pulling them in rafts, pushing them in bikes, that type of thing. So It's a really fantastic organization, and I ran with them when I was out there. But
sounds awesome.
oh, they're great. I can hook you up with some of the people out there just to actually you might be able to give a speech for them. I'm just thinking of that right now because they are a fantastic group. I know all the directors, really a wonderful group. That's my book is about that organization. So,
hey.
What's that?
So that sounds incredible.
Yeah. So the whole speaking thing, we'll get back to that after we're done with the interview. But what I was gonna ask was, a lot of people think about how to treat someone with a disability or how to react when they meet someone with a disability. So can you speak a little bit to the audience and to the listeners about what you would hope they would do if they met someone with a disability or if they came in contact with you?
Well, I just want to be treated like anyone else. And there's one, and that sounds cliche almost, but really, it's not you poor guy, you're in a wheelchair. Well, screw that. I don't. You know what? That's done, and I am in a wheelchair, but that's not my identity.
Right.
And so. Just treat me like anyone else. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, and here's something that happens, and it's one of the things that it's still hard to deal with, and that is that people lower the bar for you. Like the expectations are lowered, and that's one of the things that I really love about Sean Stevenson and working with him. He's like, you didn't lower the bar for me.
No.
In fact, he raised it. Mm-hmm. I appreciated that, and I just pushed me all the more. Mm-hmm. And just because somebody has a disability, regardless of what that is, doesn't mean that the bar has to be lowered.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's a wonderful message, man. I remember at the event when Sean Stevenson talked about the word disability, and he said, disabled, not able. He goes, my condition does not define me. I am not my condition. For anyone who's listening is unfamiliar with Sean Stevenson, he is in a wheelchair and has been in a wheelchair his whole life. And so he talks about disabilities and says, my condition does not define me. And that's something that you can expand and extrapolate to really almost any part of life, because I know people who have had cancer who say cancer doesn't define me. I am not cancer. I am this person, and I have this illness, or I have this disability. And like you said, you're like, all right, that's done. It is what it is. Let's move on and really live life. So for the listeners, for anyone who, and also for anyone who is, I remember a lot of people talking when I told them about My Team Triumph, saying they weren't sure what to say or how to behave properly in front of people with certain disabilities, whether it was mental or physical, or how to respond, how to react. And one of the most basic lessons, and it seems simple, but in a lot of cases it's not, is just to be yourself. It's like Steve is saying, be you and treat that person like you would treat anybody else. It seems obvious, but so many people forget it, that we're all looking for the same things. And this is not just talking about someone with a disability versus someone who does not have one of those disabilities. It's anywhere in the world. It's all different parts, all different aspects, all different walks of life. We're looking to connect. We're looking to be loved. We're looking to share our stories with people. So, and not at any point, don't treat anybody different, even people at different socioeconomic levels. If you look at Steve's message in a really global way, it is just so powerful and so profound to show you how to treat everyone in your life. I mean, it goes back to, like you said, Steve, it can sound cliche, but the golden rule of treat others the way you want to be treated. And you'd be amazed how, when you're willing to connect with anyone, how just amazing friendships will form. You'll open yourself up to hear incredible stories, and you'll open up to have your life impacted by beautiful, wonderful people that you may have otherwise not made the effort to connect with. So Steve, I really love that message, and I appreciate you sharing that, dude. And it's always, like I was telling you about before, it's always fun for me to hear people's stories, and to engage and listen to the different messages they have. And I mean, even from our short conversation today, there's so many different powerful messages that you have touched on, and that you really have a lot of emotion and fire behind that I love, and I can't wait to see you bring to the stage, dude. So to continue with the interview, one question that I really love to use as kind of a closeout for my interviews, because I think it's a powerful question for my audience of the young adults, the college grads, the people who are looking for purpose and passion in their life. And actually, before we get to that question, since I touched on purpose and passion, I would ask you, what have been the best things or the most powerful ways for you to find the things that really ignite your fire, that connect you with your passion and allow you to approach it or demonstrate it in a really wonderful way?
Wow, that's an incredible question.
I'm going deep on you here.
Yeah, you're going deep on me there, because I've got to be honest with you. Finding my passion has really been it's one of my personal struggles. It's like, I've been doing certain things for a long time, and it's like I want to find something more, something that drives me more. Mm-hmm. And so this journey that I started on was actually last year. Mm-hmm. Where I found out about Sean Stevenson, and I don't even recall offhand exactly how that was, but I learned about him, and I looked him up on his website, and I thought, wow, this is really interesting. And I've still got some things that I need to work through. He's a fantastic therapist, and so I wanted to talk to him, and I did so, and we connected a little bit, and he said, why don't you come to my 10K speeches event. Mm-hmm. in 2014. And so I said, well, okay. And I went there with no intention of getting into public speaking or doing anything with coaching or anything like that. And I just kind of went with it and learned, and then all of a sudden it just hit a trigger for me. And it's like, well, this, I got into this class, and it's like, okay, things are starting to look in a different direction that is starting to move me and make me feel like there's purpose.
Right.
So, it was sort of, in a way, it was by accident, mm-hmm. but I don't really believe anything is by accident. Mm-hmm. I really believe that, the way the universe works and the way our journeys go is never by accident. We're on the path that we're on for a reason.
Absolutely.
So while I say it's by accident, I know it's not. Mm-hmm. And if I could, there was one thing I wanted to add. If we can, backwards just a little bit.
Absolutely.
What you're talking about with, when you're working with or talking to somebody with a disability, mm-hmm. and and that is, it's okay to not ignore the disability. Mm-hmm. Like when you're with someone, I love it when people come up to me and want to know what happened. Mm-hmm. Because that gives me a tremendous opportunity. First of all, it's a great icebreaker. I mean, generally people disabled are not ashamed of their disability. It just is.
Right.
It's nothing like if you ask somebody about their disability, they're not going to start crying. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? They're not going to just go, and then just go into their sob story. I mean, I guess it might happen, but I've never seen it. Mm-hmm. In all my years, and I've met a lot of people with disabilities, mm-hmm. and so hey, what happened to you? What's going on here? And I'm more than happy to educate, and tell people about what happens and what happens when you have a spinal cord injury. How do you do this? How do you do that? And that's that opportunity to educate people and teach them and for the most part, people, they want to know.
Right.
They're curious about it. And they're like, wow, that's really something else. So anyway, I just wanted to add that to what we were talking about earlier.
No, I love that, and I think that's really important because I think there can be a certain perception that many times where somebody's like, oh, I have to ignore it or I can't acknowledge it, but someone may be genuinely curious. So to the point that you said earlier, just be yourself and treat that person like any other person. If you went up to your friend and there was something that they were wearing, you would just ask them about it, or if there was something that was going on, you would ask them directly. So like you said, this is just again about being real and being genuine with the person that you're dealing with and saying, hey, I'm curious, in a respectful, open way to hear their story and hear what they have to share. So I'm really glad you brought that back, dude. And Steve, I was going to ask, how old are you now?
I'm 52.
52. Okay. Now, I think that is another powerful piece of your message and story, and I really appreciate how candid and honest you were with your answer and saying, like, it's still something I struggle with, because what I think a lot of young adults, especially those who are at that early 20s age, one of the biggest struggles they have is feeling like they have to have things all figured out right then, that they have to know exactly what they want to do and how they want to do it and who they want to marry, and it's complete nonsense. I mean, everyone I've talked to on this show, no matter what age they're at, is still looking for purpose or a deeper meaning of purpose or deeper connection, and I think the fact that you were able to share that so honestly is really empowering for the listeners and for me too. I mean, I say the listeners a lot, but a lot of times I'm talking about myself. It was like you said, it's asking the questions you want to learn or reminding yourself of the lessons you need to hear. That's a lot of what I'm doing with this show, but by reminding myself and reminding the listeners that you don't have to have it all figured out at any point. But when you have that survivor mentality and you apply that in a way that says, I'm going to push, and I'm going to grow, and I'm going to keep trying to find whatever this passion and purpose is, even when I haven't found it right away, or if it takes several years or decades to find. And so for you, like you said, it kind of happened by accident, but it still took you going to this event. So there was action on your part that pushed you to just give this a shot. And by you giving it a shot, now you've kind of uncovered this amazing, not only gift and ability you have in speaking and really touching people's hearts, but now you're seeing the power in your stories and how they can touch people's lives. So I think that's a beautiful message for everyone listening, myself included, because that reminds everyone that as long as you continue to make an effort and take shots, sooner or later you're going to find the things you love. And sometimes it takes some people longer than others, but when you are persistent, you apply that survivor mentality and you keep pushing, great things will ultimately happen. So that was lovely. I love the answer, man. So
Thank you. Hey, the worst thing you can do is nothing.
Yes, absolutely. And I've actually never heard it phrased that way, but I love that. The worst thing you can do is nothing. Mm-hmm. So now I will give you the closeout question. Okay. I always close out my interviews with the same question because I believe it's relevant to many of the topics that we've touched on throughout the show. And typically the question is, what if you could go back and talk to yourself at college graduation, what would you tell yourself? But in this circumstance, I feel like the really pivotal moment in your story was the accident where that really kind of shifted the trajectory of your life. So it's up to you. It's however you would choose to answer the question. But if you wanted to go talk to you pre-accident or post-accident, if you could go back and talk to your younger self, knowing everything you know now, what would be the message you would deliver?
Oh, wow. You know what? I think what I would say to myself at that time would be to really think about what drives me personally and what jazzes me, for lack of a better word, and not just what my friends are doing or what other people think I should do. Mm-hmm. And and that's something that's hard. That's something that I personally struggled with for a long time. It's like other people had this vision or thought that I should be doing this or should be doing that, and and so I would do things for that reason. And that's really, that's where you end up not fulfilled.
Right.
You're fulfilling other people's wishes. First of all, they don't, it's you that you need to fulfill. And, I think if I could go back and teach myself something, that would be it. Just to, find what makes me happy and drives me and pursue that.
Fantastic. I love that.
And that's what I'm trying to instill. And I've had conversations with my daughters when I see them now. It's like, so what do you really, what burns your fire, And if they say, so, well, it may be one thing or another, but I don't know how I can do that and make money. Well, you know what? Or make a living out of doing something like that. Find your passion, and then you'll find a way. You'll find a way.
I love that, dude. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is such a consistent response. I think it's almost ingrained in us when you say, what would you love to do more than anything in the world? If you could do anything, what would it be? People, before they even finish the thought, like let's just say with a professional skydiver, just to throw something out there, their brain is already thinking up reasons of why that can't work, and to your point exactly, of why I can't make money or make a living doing it. When on this show, there have been countless examples of people finding different ways no matter what, and if you just Google the examples, there are people who have found a way to make money doing everything. In one of Vishen Lakhiani's speeches, he talks about, he's like, if you want to be the best maple syrup taste tester in the world, you can do that, and you can find a way to make that into a very successful living. He's like, there are people out there who do that. So exactly what you said, I think one of it is just acknowledging what it is you want to do, and then two, don't be afraid to admit it. Because a lot of times people have this burning fire and passion in their heart, but they're afraid to express it to their friends or society because they know it's really not generally accepted, or it wouldn't go over well, or people would say the exact same things and say, how can you make money with that? And it's really not for them to be concerned about or to worry about, because it's really about you and fueling yourself, like you said, to grow into that and find a way to build it. That's what any entrepreneur has done. That's what any person who's created something new has done, has struck out to do it because it's what their heart was speaking to them. So absolutely love that, Steve. Now, as we said before, I believe I want people to be able to contact you after listening to this interview, because I'm sure that once people hear it, especially the people that are looking for a great speaker, will want to be reaching out to you. So the address that we discussed was steve.sconzert@yahoo.com. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so for all the listeners, that's Steve, Steve .Sconzert, SCONZERT @yahoo.com. And I'll also include that in the show notes for anyone, so you can reach out to Steve if you'd be interested in having him for a speaking engagement. And so, Steve, we're going to be wrapping up the interview here, and I just want to thank you so much for sharing your story, for being so open and candid and honest. And I really appreciate you taking the time today to be on the show.
And Brian, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. This has been a thrill. I've really enjoyed this, and I really enjoyed spending time with you and being able to hopefully reach out to your listeners as well. So thanks a lot, man.
I'm sure that the people listening will be taking many, many lessons from this. And dude, I think this is going to be the first of many podcast interviews for you. I see some big things coming, and I'm very excited to see what comes next for you and some of these steps you're taking. So now, for all the listeners, as always, I got to give you my closeout. So, if you would like to subscribe to this podcast, you can search for Overcoming Graduation on iTunes or on Stitcher. If you'd like to join the mailing list, you can visit overcominggraduation.com and put in your information. You can also see a full list of all of the episodes, as well as some of my videos and a bio about me, and you can learn about upcoming offers, giveaways, and anything else going on at overcominggraduation.com. And you can also check out Overcoming Graduation on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you'd like to reach out to me directly, if you didn't quite catch Steve's email and you want to contact me to hook him up with a speech, you can contact me at at brian@overcominggraduation.com. So I want to thank you all for listening today. I hope that you guys enjoyed today's show, and go out today, share some love, and get to know somebody new. All right, guys, you have a great day.